This is India at 9, broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi.
"40 workers of the Tariq Noor Al Huda construction company who are Indians have been kidnapped."
बस वहाँ लड़के का जो नंबर दिया हुआ उस पर हम कर रहे हैं, तो उससे बात नहीं हुई।
जैसे हालात हैं उसके हिसाब से तो वापस आ जाना चाहिए वो।
Good evening. You're with India at 9. The abduction of 40 Indians in Iraq. The big story tonight. The Iraq crisis hits home. The Ministry of External Affairs confirms 40 construction workers from India have been kidnapped in Mosul. There's no information on their whereabouts, no ransom call so far. The government says it is coordinating with humanitarian agencies to secure their release.
संगठन है, उन्हें खाना दिया, रहने के लिए अच्छे रूम भी दिए।
Families have been in touch with the kidnapped Indians. The brother of a kidnapped construction worker tells CNN IBN all are safe. Minister Harsimrat Kaur Badal blames the construction companies, says the situation has gone bad to worse. ISIS rebels close in on Baghdad, just 45 minutes away from the Iraqi capital. The country's largest oil refinery, situated in Baiji, comes under attack. Yes, and that indeed is going to be our big story and our talking point here on India at 9. We'll be looking at the government's options, its response so far, and of course that big question of evacuation with all our guests ahead. Let's also track the other headlines we are following on India at 9.
मैं नरेंद्र मोदी जी से आपके तहत भी अपील कर रही हूँ कि मुझे 2 मिनट का अगर उन्होंने वक्त दिया तो मैं तुरंत उनसे मिलकर अपनी बात कहना चाहूँगी।
The woman who accused Union Minister of State Nihal Chand of raping her 3 years ago claims she's being threatened, she's being intimidated. Wants Prime Minister Narendra Modi to sack him. The minister remains defiant. And that's going to be our second talking point here on India at 9. Can a minister accused of rape be allowed to continue in the cabinet? The panel on your screens. The other headlines, a new twist in the Preeti Zinta case. Nes Wadia's father and industrialist Nusli Wadia files a police complaint, says he's being threatened by the underworld with phone calls and an SMS allegedly warning him against interfering in the matter. Maharashtra Governor Shankar Narayan plays down the controversy over the likely removal of UPA-appointed governors. Says no one has a permanent post in democracy. Sources say the Home Secretary called him 2 days ago. Heavy rains lash Uttar Kashi. The water levels have risen. The authorities have issued a high alert. Humiliated by Holland, title holders Spain take on Chile today. A win here is a must for the reigning world champions. Well, first here on India at 9, it was being talked about all this morning. Finally, in the afternoon, the Ministry of External Affairs confirmed that 40 Indians have been kidnapped in Iraq. That press statement remained cryptic and brief without giving out any more details. The abducted Indians were working in the Tariq Noor Al Huda construction company. The government says the location of the kidnapped Indians is not known as yet. The ministry also saying no ransom calls have been received so far, and that the government is ready to work with anyone who can help in the rescue of the kidnapped Indians. Now, the Ministry of External Affairs also giving out that statement saying we will not be sparing any efforts to help the Indians who are stranded in Iraq. The Punjab Chief Minister Prakash Singh Badal has spoken to CNN IBN exclusively. He said that his government is ready to pay a ransom to bring home the abducted Indians. Remember, a large number coming in from Punjab.
That these 40 Indian workers, I can confirm to you now, have been kidnapped. But they have also indicated that at this stage they do not know the location, working with several of our partners in Iraq as well as elsewhere to try and see what would be the best ways to take this our effort further. We have not received any calls of any nature from anyone who has indicated that about ransom.
Now, many of the Indians trapped there do not have their passports. When violence escalated, the company officials they were working for simply fled the scene, leaving them to fend for themselves. We managed to speak to some of the relatives of those kidnapped.
वो 10 महीने पहले जहाँ पंजाब में एजेंट था उसके जरिए वहाँ पर कंस्ट्रक्शन कंपनी है, वहाँ पर वो टावर क्रेन चलाता था, क्रेन ऑपरेटर था। पहले तो 1-2 दिन वो रोता रहा था। सभी भारतीय मुश्किल में से जो पंजाबी लोग हैं सर उन्होंने फिर जो ISI संगठन है उन्होंने उन्हें खाना भी दिया, रहने के लिए अच्छे रूम भी दिए। तो ISI संगठन ने उन्हें कहा भी हम आपको ऐसे नहीं जाने देंगे, हम आपको सैलरी दवाकर कंपनी से पहले भागी थी। जब साइड पर ISI वाले ने कब्जा किया तो कंपनी पहले उन्हें छोड़कर भागी थी।
बस वहाँ लड़के का जो नंबर दिया हुआ उस पर हम कर रहे हैं, तो उससे बात नहीं हुई हमारी। जो बच्चा वहाँ ठीक ठाक रहा तो वहाँ रह सकता हो, तो मानो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। भी बच्चा हमारा परेशान नहीं मन हो,
सुरक्षा देनी चाहिए।
हाँ जी, सुरक्षा देनी चाहिए उसको। जो मान ले उड़ाना चाहा बच्चा, हम उड़ा बुलाने में राजी हैं। जो मान ले बच्चा हमारा वहाँ सही रह सका तो वहाँ हम कोई परेशानी नहीं है, पर हमारे बच्चे को परेशानी ना कोई भी हुआ वहाँ।
जैसे हालात हैं उसके हिसाब से तो वापस आ जाना चाहिए। वो सुरक्षा भी मान लिया मिलनी चाहिए उसको और वापस आ जाना चाहिए। बस
तो 4 दिन पहले गल हुई है, आंदे उधर लड़ाई बहुत चल रही है। बस कंपनी वाले सामने रखे, हम कंपनी वाले उन्होंने बाहर कढ़िया हुआ, आंदे कंपनी वाले आप भज गए।
उत्थे हमला हो गया लागे, आंड को सिक्योरिटी गार्ड वाले भी भज गए। एक कंट्रीन वाला आंदे को रहा, वो अद्धा तुहाडे नाल ही रहू, जिथे जाओगे तुहाडे नाल ही जाऊंगा।
10 महीने हो गए भेजे नूं ते 10 महीने बाद मैं जिन्ना कर्जा चुके गया वो भी नहीं पूरा आया। गड़बड़ हो गई उधर।
Well, as I mentioned, majority of the family is coming from the state of Punjab, and Chief Minister Prakash Singh Badal has spoken exclusively to my colleague Rupashri Nanda, saying his government was ready to pay a ransom if needed to bring home the abducted Indians.
The situation in Iraq is very uncertain. What would be your course of action now?
As state government, I have instructed the Chief Secretary to ask the DCs to visit all the families.
You seem a little helpless, but is there only certain things that the Indian government can do, and beyond that it cannot do much? Would you acknowledge that?
They should do the maximum. And I can say that if any they want any, I don't know, I should not say or not, ransom or other thing, Punjab government is ready to pay all the.
Also bringing to you here on India at 9, another very important voice. Harsimrat Kaur Badal, a minister in the Modi government coming from the state of Punjab once again. Speaking to my colleague Rupashri, she said the situation has gone from bad to worse and has been critical of the manner in which the construction companies have behaved when violence escalated.
Ma'am, you must have heard about this incident of 40 people being kidnapped. It is the first big crisis. Most of the people are from your state. So as a minister of the government, in the government, what would be your priority now?
In fact, this topic was taken up at the cabinet meeting as well. I discussed with Sushma ji. Unfortunately, there's been a turn of offense for the worse, because till the morning when she was in touch, these 40 people were working for a private construction company, and they had been informed that the government was ready to lift them and bring them back to India. But the construction company decided to move them from Mosul to another place called Arvil, and they were going with their owner, and in the process they were kidnapped. There were some other people as well as these 40 people from Punjab. I believe the other people were let off, but these ones have been kidnapped.
Okay, let's track the overall situation both here at the centre and at the state with our correspondents Amrita Tripathi and Jyoti Kamal joining us live. Amrita, I'll come first to you. There really has been no statement that has come in from the government after the Ministry of External Affairs came with that confirmation. Is there any sense we have of what the government's strategy is at this point in time?
At this point, Anubha, I think it's a race against time, and there's certainly very limited information. And I think we have to acknowledge also we're seeing conflicting information coming in. What the MEA has made very clear is that they know that these 40 Indian construction workers have been kidnapped in Mosul. They don't know exactly where they are. They don't know who's holding them. But from what Jyoti is hearing from families there in Punjab, it could be an entirely different story. I think what the government is looking to do is reach out through international aid agencies for whatever assistance or information they can provide, UN-related missions and the Iraqi government. The problem is, of course, that in Mosul and Tikrit, the Iraqi government is not functioning. ISIS is in charge, as we've been tracking right here, Anubha. At the same time, what they've done is set up those control rooms. They're trying to set up contingency plans, they tell us, for anyone else who's looking to be evacuated. So Syed Akbaruddin was able to give us some good news, at least earlier today, saying that 200 Indians in Najaf who didn't feel safe, well, the government coordinated with their employers, a Turkish construction company, and they're going to fly out on Friday. The nurses in Tikrit as well, also safe as of now, but the concern really is how to get these evacuation plans off the ground when we're really seeing Indians caught in the crossfire of a worsening sectarian crisis.
Right, and also scattered in a sense in many parts of Iraq. Jyoti, quick word from you. Majority of the abducted Indians, or I can say nearly all perhaps, coming in from the state of Punjab. I do believe that the centre and the state have started talking in some formal or informal manner.
Well, that's right. But as you were pointing out, a very cryptic and a short message that they have been kidnapped. Now, that's something, that's the sense that the relatives had not been getting, because the ones who did speak with them, they were told by the ones in Iraq that once the company officials abandoned them, the ISIS in fact started supporting them and said that you will be caught in the crossfire and you need to be kept safe till such time that there is a safe passage for you. So they are throwing the ball back at the government's court that you ensure that safe passage and find out where they are, because they have told us that the ISI is treating them very well. They have been able to speak with us. They have not spoken of a kidnapping as of now. So earlier it was just a worrisome situation, but of course after this confirmation it's turned into a panic. But the big question is, have they really been kidnapped, or are they just seeking a safe passage? And if they are seeking a safe passage, how soon is the government going to ensure that? So the pressure definitely on the government, but in the meantime Deputy Commissioner is in touch with all the families here in Punjab, and the government also, the Punjab government, putting pressure on the central government that everything that needs to be done to ensure that they come back.
Right, but that very cryptic statement of the Ministry of External Affairs came in, made no bones about the word kidnapping or abduction. Amrita, if I can bring you back into this discussion, Harsimrat Kaur spoke to Rupashri just a couple of minutes ago, and she said that till the afternoon, the government really was of the view that they could have perhaps airlifted these 40 Indians who were not abducted till that point in time. She's putting the onus, in a sense, on the construction companies who completely abandoned them midway, and as we're learning, left them with nothing, with no travel document, not even their passport.
That's really the shocking state of affairs, but also speaking to the crisis as it unfolds. Anubha, what she said also, interestingly, talking about them being abducted while they were trying to get safe passage to Erbil, I think she mentioned, which is the airport in Kurdistan. We were told one of two airports still functioning, Baghdad and Erbil, that would have been close to Mosul. So it is unfortunate. She seems to have confirmed, though, those reports that these 40 construction workers were abducted while they were trying to be evacuated from the country. There's a huge crisis, and there's no denying that. I think the MEA and the Indian government at some level, as they try to send their former ambassador back, Suresh Reddy, to Baghdad to make the most of his expertise and his on-the-ground sort of domain expertise and contact base there, certainly struggling in terms of coordinating also with these international agencies. But as we see the larger picture, Anubha, it's unraveling essentially across the north for everyone. It is a massive crisis. People are talking about Iraq disintegrating. So in a sense, we're seeing these the sorry state of affairs, 40 Indians caught perhaps in the crossfire of that.
Yes, indeed is a story the world is watching, but the crisis has come closer home. Amrita Tripathi, Jyoti Kamal, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks very much for giving us all the details of what the government strategy is and what are those anxious voices coming in from the state of Punjab. Let me try and bring you another voice. I recorded this conversation, this interview, a little earlier in the evening, and I began by asking Gurpinder Kaur about the last contact she had made with her brother Surinder. He's one of the 40 who, as the Ministry of External Affairs says, has been kidnapped in Mosul.
उन्होंने तब तक यही कहा था कि हम ठीक हैं, हमारे लिए कोई अगर गवर्नमेंट को अपील करनी पड़ती है तो आप करिए, कैसे भी हमें वापस लेके आइए, क्योंकि हमारे पास पासपोर्ट्स नहीं है, आने का कोई सलूशन नहीं है हमारे पास कि हम यहाँ से कैसे निकलें।
पासपोर्ट नहीं है, शी सेड। जब 15 जून को आखिरी बार आपकी बात हुई थी, उन्होंने आपको कुछ भी बताया था कि किन लोगों ने उन्हें पकड़ा है? क्या वो उन्हें किडनैप कर चुके हैं उस वक्त जब 15 जून को बात हुई थी?
नहीं मैम, तब उन्होंने ऐसा कुछ नहीं बोला था। उन्होंने तब यही बोला था कि हम अभी सेफ हैं।
जिस कंपनी के लिए आपके भाई काम करते हैं, क्या उन्होंने किसी तरह की मदद की है या आपके भाई ने किस तरह की बात की थी?
क्योंकि मैम उनकी कंपनी के ओनर्स उन्हें छोड़ के चले गए थे 8 जून को ही, तो उन्हें यही था कि अब हमारी इंडियन गवर्नमेंट ही हमारे लिए कुछ कर सकती है।
कितने लोग हैं आपके भाई के साथ? वो कितना बड़ा ग्रुप है गुरपिंदर?
मैम उसने बोला था कि हम 40 पंजाबी बॉयज हैं और 50 बांग्लादेश के हैं हमारे साथ।
और आपके भाई और क्या बाकी के जितने भी वर्कर्स हैं ये सब एक साथ हैं?
जब तक मेरी बात हुई तब तक तो ये सब एक साथ थे।
और आपके भाई कब से इराक में काम के लिए हैं?
वो 11 महीने से वहाँ थे, लेकिन वहाँ कंस्ट्रक्शन का काम चल रहा था, वही काम करते थे वो।
अच्छा, एक आखिरी सवाल है मेरा गुरपिंदर आपके लिए, सरकार के लिए आपका कुछ संदेश है, उनसे कुछ कहना चाहेंगे? और क्या आपके साथ किसी तरह का संपर्क किया है सरकार ने?
मेरी यही रिक्वेस्ट है कि अगर उन्होंने ये पता लगा लिया है कि वो किडनैप्ड हैं, तो अब वो भी ये भी जल्दी से पता लगा लें कि वो कहाँ हैं और उन्हें वापस लाने के लिए जितना जल्दी हो सकता है एक्शंस लें।
Okay, so just one of the many voices that are coming in from the state of Punjab as the government really tries to tackle this crisis. What really are the options before the Modi government? Remember, it's being seen as the one big crisis that's confronting the government. First and foremost, the government currently needs to get clarity on who has kidnapped these 40 Indians and what are their demands of ransom, if any, at this point in time. Remember, the Ministry of External Affairs statement has been extremely cryptic, just saying 40 Indians have been kidnapped. The second big option or process, in a sense, for the government is to maintain contact with humanitarian agencies. We already do believe that the government has made contact with humanitarian agencies. The third big point, remember, with no one's authority currently running large as far as Iraq is concerned, the government needs to look at that big question: who does it really negotiate with, if it indeed has to negotiate with? The fourth big point at this stage for the government is that it also needs to maintain a constant contact with the Iraqi government. Remember, there is a good relationship between New Delhi and Iraq. The government needs to establish contact with perhaps some of the infrastructure companies that work in this conflict zone, that work in this area. Many of these companies have some kind of a tacit understanding often when they operate in areas like Iraq. The government could also be currently looking at deploying additional diplomatic resources. It could be opening lines of communication with other countries like West Asia, especially because of how the Iraqi government is struggling at this point in time. And of course, really the last option, but one that the government will always have on its mind, it will be keeping its military assets on standby. Remember, there is a naval asset that the government currently has in the Gulf of Eden. It is engaged in anti-piracy operations, a turnaround of a couple of hours. We already know that the Indian Air Force is on standby with at least 3 of its aircraft. But of course, that green signal needs to come in from the government. Let's take you straight to our talking point here on India at 9. This is the big crisis confronting the government. 40 Indians have not just gone missing, they have been now kidnapped. The government will possibly be looking at evacuation in the next couple of days if matters turn to the worst. Let me introduce my panel. KC Singh is joining us, former diplomat. I'm also being joined by Commodore retired M.R. Khan. He has served as a defense attaché in the region and as a speaker at the NDC, the National Defense Council. And Vijay Prashad is with us once again tonight on India at 9. He is at the American University of Beirut, joining us via Skype from Lebanon. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us. KC Singh, I'll take it straight to you. What are the options that the government currently has to rescue these Indians who have been abducted, considering the facts of the case, that we know there are no ransom calls and we don't even know the identity of the group who could be behind this kidnapping?
See, firstly, right in the middle of what is almost a civil war, the fog of a civil war, you'll get conflicting opinions, news and so on and so forth. So we don't know what the reality is. So first thing the government would be doing is to sort out what are the real facts, where are they at the moment. Now one thing which is clear, and there are a lot of finger pointing doesn't help at this point to say this company did, that company did, because the company was, from what you have recounted, actually trying to help them, and that was the most logical thing to do, is to move into the Kurdish area, because that is a stable zone in the north. So if they were abducted moving to the Kurdish area, probably they were doing the right thing. But if they've been taken away from there, now what would happen is the ministry has sent Suresh Reddy. He was our ambassador there. He's an exceedingly good diplomat. He's worked with me, and I think he'll have excellent contacts. Now the ones he'll deal with would be the Kurds. He'll deal with, maybe he has assets in the Sunni heartland where the tribal leaders are now allies of the ISIS. He would also be talking, we should also be talking to the Saudis and the Qataris, because they've been funding ISIS in the past. Even though the Saudis say they are not involved with it, but the intelligence minister is somewhere in the background behind all this, what is happening. Iranians cannot help you there. The Iraqi government cannot help you in the north, not in the areas that they have lost. So we are dealing with the Iraqi government for any extraction of Indians from areas within their control, Indians who want to leave, like from Najaf and so on and so forth. But in other places, and really Indian military assets can't do anything. What you can do can be send in your Air Force planes to Baghdad to lift the people if they need to be lifted out, if these civilian planes are not, civil aircraft are not available. So you talk to different people, but I think it is unnecessary at that moment and even dangerous, as Chief Minister Badal did, though he himself had a doubt about it, to talk of ransom. We must not talk of that. Many countries in the world maintain this, that we do not pay a ransom. Because if we start saying upfront you want to pay a ransom, then the other person is going to negotiate you till the cows come home. You don't do that. You begin by saying, I do not pay a ransom. And you please, and use the other assets. And if it has to be paid, I remember it was paid. It was probably paid in case of the lorry drivers in 2005 or 6, but we used their employers, the companies, to pay it. But governments paying ransom, it becomes then an invitation in future for Indians to be picked up in different places. A very dangerous game.
And
so
I think we'll have to give it to the Chief Minister. He was a little hesitant about it. My question to you my question to you really on the first part of how you answered this question, that there are going to be lots of conflicting reports that come in. Some of the reports that we've managed to source from family members who have been in touch with the abducted Indians, possibly till from 24 to 48 hours ago, seem to be suggesting that they are safe, they're being treated well, seem to be suggesting that this perhaps may not really be an abduction oblique a kidnapping, but they do feel they have been abandoned with really no travel documents as well to speak about.
I wouldn't go with that. Don't believe anything that ISIS or Taliban or these militant groups say.
This is not ISIS, this is the family. This is not the ISIS, this is the family members
the family
who've been in touch with. Yes.
Not true, but they said the ISIS people told these people that you're welcome to stay on, it will find you an exit route. Now, I don't trust any of these guys. The militants in the field, they will sell you to the devil, they may sell you to the next guy who wants to trade you off. We don't know, because there are multiple groups floating around. Another set of groups that probably our diplomat Suresh Reddy will talk to would be the tribal leaders in the Sunni belt. They are also aligning with ISIS. You know, we have to talk to not external elements, but elements within Iraq, within northern Iraq, which are Sunni, which we have dealt with, and which now may be aligned with ISIS. They are in a position to put pressure on ISIS.
Ambassador Singh, there is also talk among the diplomatic community, and I believe this would be protocol in a sense when you confront a situation or a hostage situation like this one, that you would be in touch perhaps with humanitarian agencies, because they have channels of communication with many of these groups. Sometimes even construction companies, because they're operating in conflict areas like this one, have some kind of a tacit agreement with some of these groups.
Yes, that is true, but the companies can sometimes be a double-edged weapon, because the company may not be willing to pay. They may get greedy and demand a lot of money from the company, because the company would also have equipment there. They'll also have other kinds of assets left behind. So then your individuals may get stuck in this larger deal that the company may or may not do with the militant organizations, because they'll have a complex range of issues to deal with. So this, I think we have to focus on our people, see how we can extract them, use the carrot and the stick, but we don't talk upfront of any ransom money and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Ambassador Singh, I have a stack of questions more for you, but I'll just switch on to my other panelists for a bit. Commodore, if I can bring you in a situation like this, where it is very, very clear that there is no one authority's writ that is running large as far as Iraq is concerned. If the government was to even negotiate or begin the process of negotiation, it obviously is very clear it's not going to be with one identity.
I think you're right, because there are a number of groups which are operating in the region, and there are Naqshbandians, there are Ansar, there are tribal heads. They all are, all the Sunni groups are cooperating with the ISIS, and it's not ISIS alone, because it has got only about 2,500 people. So this kind of territory could not have been won by ISIS by themselves alone. So what we can do is, one thing which is in our favor is that ISIS is trying to establish that everything is normal in Mosul and people must return to Mosul, except for the fact that we have taken it away from the Shia government and we are going to control Mosul. And so it's unlikely that they would maltreat whatever these hostages they have taken, Indian hostages they have taken. So I think if we wait a while, there will be something coming up, and some group will be sort of sending us a message as to whether they want to negotiate with a ransom or something else. So I think there is really no need to panic, and I don't think that ISIS is going to make any more enemies, and particularly when they are saying that the whole international community is going to get lined up against them. Iran is against them, even Turkey has condemned it. So I think this situation is not as hopeless as it might appear on the surface.
Okay, and you're possibly saying that there needs to be a little bit of a wait and watch. I'm not trying to get into a blame game here, Commodore, but do you believe the Indian government has really done enough to match up to this crisis that is actually unfolding in a very volatile situation?
I think because the situation is so sort of confused and nobody knows who is controlling what areas, whether they are Sunni tribal groups, whether ISIS has some kind of a structure which is controlling these regions, and the Iraqi government certainly does not have any control over these regions. In fact, much of the trouble is because of the Iraqi government. It is Nouri al-Maliki and his sort of transport minister, Amr al-Hadi, who have precipitated this situation by dealing with Sunnis in the most brutal manner in last 3-4 years and not even giving it to their modest demands. So I don't think that Iraqi government will have any clout with ISIS or any of these Sunni tribal groups which are sworn enemies of the Baghdad government. I think it will have to be through humanitarian groups that we can negotiate over a period.
Right. Vijay, if I can bring you in here into this discussion, when the Ministry of External Affairs came out with that confirmation, it was a very cryptic 2 to 3 liner actually confirming that 40 Indians were abducted, were kidnapped. There were no indications of any ransom call, their whereabouts, etc. The government also did not even go as far as to say that who they believed could be behind this particular abduction. But everyone here on the panel seems to be pointing towards the ISIS. Would that be fair?
Well, it's certainly fair, because ISIS has a track record of kidnapping or abducting foreigners largely and seeking ransom. We know that there are already companies in Bakuba which have foreign workers who have approached ISIS commanders and offered to pay protection money. This has been the case when ISIS was the Islamic State of Iraq before they expanded in 2012. This is how they made, initially the millions of dollars that allowed them to take Fallujah and then Ramadi in December of 2013, January of 2014. I think it's extremely important that the Indian government, we know, is already in touch with the Iraqi Red Crescent Society, which has reasonably good relations with ISIS and has had this relationship not only in Iraq but also in Syria, where the Syria Red Crescent Society has helped negotiate the release of journalists, the 2 Spanish journalists who were picked up by ISIS in Syria. So there is a track record of working through the Red Crescent Society.
Right.
I think Ambassador Singh is also correct. It's a good time to make a phone call to Riyadh.
It's a good time to make a phone call to Riyadh and get those diplomatic initiatives going, because Ambassador K.C. Singh, many of these countries really could be of big help to maintain, to first start that contact and then do any further negotiations on behalf of New Delhi.
No, you have to work at multiple levels. We are probably a little slow because I think the top echelons were all in Bhutan, and by the time they came back, this was already full-blown. But the crisis had been building up for a week. And this is not the first time. We've seen it in the past also, that when a thing like this happens, we wake up after the event, because often the mission doesn't even know how many Indians are there in which part of a country. So we have old protocols on this, that we must maintain local contacts in all these towns who should be in touch with the Indians, or at least aware of their contact numbers. And now in the world of the mobile phones and Facebook and all, this is something that we need to do. If we have a large worker population all over this extremely unstable area, we must at least have a fix on them. We must know how many are where. And not wait until somebody is picked up and then their family starts telling us.
Right.
Then you're behind the curve.
Then you're behind the curve. Ambassador K.C. Singh, so looking at the landscape as it currently is, with 40 abducted, many others scattered in different parts of Iraq, what would you urge really the government to do? Question number 1. And question number 2, does the question of evacuating the Indians there in Iraq rise at this point in time, or we need to sort out this crisis first and then look at a complete evacuation?
No, I think you have to function on both, because they are a much larger number in the south. Now, often what happens is that people don't voluntarily want to move because they have financial commitments, their salaries have not been paid. But I think the country has to take a call, because any single individual then becomes a national issue and a national problem. So you take a call that this is an unsafe area, and you just basically tell people to move out and make sure they move out. But if they are not moving out, then, let them give a commitment, let them know the consequences of what will follow, or at least have a fallback protocol. It's possible people don't move out. You can't force them to move back.
Absolutely. In fact, some of the...
you can... Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again. In fact, some of the nurses that we've spoken to have really said that they haven't been paid, and this is money that's actually keeping them back. They're not possibly feeling safe, but they do want to stay back till their employers actually pay them. Commodore, if I can bring you in quickly, we've been talking about possibly the contingency plan that needs to go hand in hand. Currently, India has military assets. We have a naval asset in the Gulf of Eden, and obviously there are already indications that the Air Force is on standby. What sort of a turnaround do you think would be needed once the government gives the green signal?
You see, firstly, I find that this geopolitical crisis cannot last too long, and the ISIS does not have the capability to occupy Baghdad and go further down south to where the Shia areas, where the real oil wells are, where the crude is coming from. So, and much before that, I think some kind of intervention from US, etc., is likely to take place, even if it is by air. I don't think that ISIS can last too long. So I feel that this crisis is likely to blow over in few weeks, if not few days' time. But at the same time, I feel that a naval ship can only go and evacuate once the negotiations have been done. I mean, it can be only used in a transport manner, and there is no other manner we can use any of our warships. So if once the negotiations take place, or it is decided that the Indians are by and large going to be evacuated, then of course Navy can play a major role like it did in Lebanon, etc.
Right. Commodore, there has been a suggestion.
But I feel, firstly, also feel that one point.
Go ahead, sir.
One point I want to tell you, that I don't think Saudi Arabia can help in this matter, because ISIS is a sworn enemy of Saudis and it believes that that's an illegitimate regime and it is totally against the Islamic principles. So I think there is no love lost between Saudis and ISIS. But if it is some other group like the tribal Sunni groups or the Naqshbandians or the Ansars, then it is possible that Saudi Arabia can use some clout.
Okay.
But if it is ISIS, I don't think Saudis have any clout with ISIS.
Vijay, would you agree with that assessment, the Commodore, of the assessment that the Saudis, in a sense, would really have no clout when it comes to negotiating with the ISIS?
Well, let me put it this way. Yesterday, the Iraqi government had very harsh words for the involvement of Saudi Arabia. Now, it is true that the Saudi government itself denies having any contact with ISIS, in fact, any contact with Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria. But it is also the case that individual princes have been known to be quite lavish with their donations to groups like ISIS, when ISIS was simply the Islamic State of Iraq.
Right.
It should also be, I think, in the frame that Exxon has evacuated its staff, that the United States Embassy in Baghdad has begun preliminary evacuation. The situation is extremely fluid. So this is a very dangerous moment. I think it's worth calling anybody who's friendly and asking them to involve themselves in trying to extricate the Indian nationals from their captivity.
Commodore, there has been a suggestion, and that's the question I was coming to you, that the Indian Air Force perhaps should be stationed in Baghdad for evacuations. My question to you is only in the context as to when you believe that time comes.
I think the better place to evacuate will be from Erbil, because there is some understanding between ISIS and the Kurdish people, because the Kurds and ISIS both are Sunnis, and so far any conflict between these two have been avoided. One of the checkposts ISIS was occupying, and when Kurds appeared, they fired at them and Kurds turned around and went away. They did not take on ISIS. So there is some kind of understanding. Similarly, when the Kurds came and took over Kirkuk, there was no resistance either from ISIS groups which were there or by the Iraqi government troops. So there is some kind of understanding between the Kurds and Nouri al-Malki's government, as well as between ISIS and the Kurdish government.
Okay.
So I think Erbil will be the safer place. We don't know what is going to happen to Baghdad.
Yes, absolutely, with the IS believed to be closing in on Baghdad. Ambassador Singh, I want to get away just for a brief moment from the diplomatic nuts and bolts which are obviously unfolding even as we speak. Many of the families really have seen the brutality of the ISIS on television screens, considering the fact that it's even shocked Al-Qaeda commanders negotiating with ISIS. How much of a tough order is that going to be, no matter which channel you choose, whether the humanitarian agencies, whether Saudi Arabia or other countries in West Asia?
Well, it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma for any country whose citizens are taken hostage. A country as powerful as US had their diplomats taken hostage by Iran in 1979. And they had to suffer the humiliation for a year or more than a year. So this happens when your citizens are taken hostage. And we remember the Indian Airlines plane going to Kandahar. So the nation is used to it. But it is a challenge for the NDA-2 government, because this is their first challenge. And they've always prided themselves on a more muscular response and so on and so forth. So everybody will be watching to see how they play their cards.
Does it bother you, or does it strike you to the fact that the Ministry of External Affairs just gave out this one cryptic statement about the abduction, and there really has been no briefing or a briefing of the strategy or its options or what it wants to do?
Which is correct, because you don't give out too much detail. A, because you're not sure of all the facts, and B, why should you let the other side know how much you know and what all you're doing to counter it. So it's good to give it out. The information should be given out in very controlled manner, but it should be given out nevertheless. People are not going to wait interminably for it. So I think let's give them a little time. Suresh Reddy would have got back. Let them get their act together. many of these things are resolved in the darkness of private negotiation rather than in the public space.
Right. Commodore, one word from you, and I think K.C. Singh perhaps dismissed some of those comments that came in either from families of the Indians abducted, but there's also one minister who's actually spoken out. Harsimrat Kaur Badal spoke to us a short while ago, and she said that till the afternoon the government was actually hoping they would be able to bring these 40 Indians, so perhaps there was some kind of communication, some kind of channel that they had opened. Then she went on to say that it's the construction companies which shifted the people and perhaps abandoned them. Would we look at it in the scope of just pure abandonment, or we now see this as these particular Indians being abducted?
No, I think we should be able to appreciate the constraints under which the government in this kind of environment works when there is completely chaotic situation. The local government is not under control. We do not know which groups are controlling what parts of the country. We know that Kurds are controlling Kirkuk. We know that in Salahuddin there are ISIS. We know that in Diyala and Fallujah there are tribal groups. So all this confusion, I think it is not easy for government to sort of immediately take action and be able to get our people back. As long as government is trying various channels which are possible, then I think it's a good thing. But I also want to bring the oil angle. The oil angle is very important. You see, there is total world consumption of oil every day is 91 million barrels per day.
That's right.
Out of which 3.5 million barrels is provided by Iraq.
That's right.
Now the oil market operates on sentiments. So even if there is a shortage of 500,000 barrels or 1 million barrels, though it is only 1% or less than 1%, but the oil prices tend to spike rapidly.
That's right.
And this would not be liked by the Western countries. For example, you may have seen that despite all the chaos in Libya, the first thing they got going was the oil wells.
That's right.
I think they would make sure that the ISIS is checked well before they can reach any of these oil sources, so that oil supplies are not disrupted.
Absolutely, Commodore, and I think that remains a big concern for India too. That's also exporting a big chunk of its oil. In fact, Iraq being that second supplier of oil. In fact, we looked at that entire oil energy space yesterday on India at 9 very, very exhaustively, and that remains a big concern. The Brent crude also constantly peaking up. I just want to give a sense to our viewers of the situation as it stands on the ground before I come back to both my panelists. Iraq's foreign minister has now asked the United States to launch airstrikes to contain the ISIS militants. In fact, earlier this week, the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry had said that the U.S. was considering this option to help Iraq. Meanwhile, the ISIS militants are closing in on the capital city of Baghdad. They've also targeted the largest oil refinery in that country. And CNN's Nick Robertson has the very latest coming in from Baghdad.
This oil refinery is very important to the Iraqi oil infrastructure in the country. If the militants can get control of it, then this is going to put a huge amount of pressure on the government to really launch ground forces that are capable of taking territory back from ISIS and the other rebel groups that are fighting with them and the tribes. But now they've gone back, perhaps with weapons that they've taken and looted from the major military bases here in the country that they've overrun in the past week, and have gone back and are now, it appears, launching an offensive rather than just encircling the refinery to actually take it, capture it and have it in their hands. I mean, people in Baghdad have become very familiar with a level of violence that anyone else in any city around the world would just find absolutely horrific. Multiple car bombs a day. Yesterday there were 5 car bombs in the city. One of them killed more than 10 people and wounded more than several dozen others. That was just one of those 5 car bombs. There are security incidents here.
Okay, so Nick Robertson reporting there from Baghdad, talking also about the attempts to capture the refinery. Vijay Prashad, if I can get you in on this overall picture, how soon, if you believe, would the United States actually come up with some kind of airstrikes? Pressure really building on all sides in that sense.
Well, look, the Iraqis have asked formally for the United States to conduct airstrikes on the ISIS position. But until an hour or so ago, the United States government has said they are not willing to launch any airstrikes. In fact, former General David Petraeus has said they would be counterproductive. So I was in Beirut in August when the United States was deciding whether to strike in Syria. And at that time as well, the U.S. was very reticent to strike and didn't strike. So I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for the cavalry to ride in this particular instance. I think the report is correct. ISIS and the Naqshband army and the Iraqi Islamic army are fighting in Bakhtiba, which is the last town on the road down to Baghdad. There have been several car bombs and inside Baghdad, in Sadr City, in New Baghdad. Will put pressure inside Baghdad by this kind of method. You forget that Fallujah, only about half an hour to 45 minutes away from Baghdad, was taken by ISIS in December.
Right.
So the pressure on Baghdad is very great. And I think one has to take this very seriously. You know, Baghdad could be it won't fall to ISIS, but it will be in the middle of a very dangerous battle, which will be terrible for the region.
Right. So the ISIS constantly increasing its footprint as far as northern Iraq is concerned. Gentlemen, I'm trying to close this debate now. Ambassador K.C. Singh has already left this particular panel. As the government perhaps is sitting on the drawing board trying to chalk out a strategy of how it's going to get these 40 Indians released, how it's perhaps going to evacuate the rest who are scattered all across that country. What do you believe the 2 points should be that they should be looking at very closely? Commodore, you can go first.
I think one is that they must negotiate from whatever channels available to try to find out which group is holding and how to reach that group, whether through the proxies or through directly. The second thing is that once that kind of negotiations are there, we should do, immediately divert some of our ships there to evacuate people who are in this danger area, or the Air Force planes, if we are to do it from Erbil. As I said, it will be much simpler to do it from Erbil than to do it from the Gulf.
Right. Vijay, do you want to go next?
I tell you that in 1991, former Ambassador K.P. Fabian oversaw the evacuation of 176,000 Indians from the region during Gulf War I. I would strongly recommend that the Indian government evacuate all Indians from Iraq. I don't think it's worthwhile to let people be. Because, we should really keep this in mind, that the German company Siemens had 50 workers at the Baiji oil refinery, and they evacuated them immediately. And they didn't wait even a day.
So you're saying it should have begun? Are you saying it should have begun already?
I think it should have begun already. I think it's a scandal that they didn't already need.
I think we've lost Vijay just as he's making that very important point. Commodore, would you agree with that assessment? It should have begun already?
No, I think we should wait, because I think situation should improve. You see, if there are about 15,000 Indians at the moment in Iraq, and it will be quite an exercise, and the fact that at the first signs of trouble, if we start evacuating, that would make our expatriates less acceptable in the Gulf region, etc. I think we should wait a little while.
Fair enough. Commodore, I'll have to thank you. The rest of my panelists are there. Well, Vijay Prashad, thanks very much for joining us here on India at Night. Welcome back. You're with India at 9 and on to our second talking point on the show. Pressures mounting on the Narendra Modi government to drop Nihal Chand from his cabinet after the woman who accused him of raping her 3 years ago claims she's being threatened, she's being intimidated. The minister himself continues to be defiant. Earlier in the day, Mahila Congress workers were protesting outside the BJP headquarters in the capital. Mari Shakil has this report.
आपको इस्तीफा देने वाले हो क्या? क्यों? मैं क्यों दूंगा? नो कमेंट्स, नो कमेंट्स, नो कमेंट्स।
The Congress taking their demand for the removal of Union Minister Nihal Chand right up to the doorsteps of the ruling party. Protesting outside the BJP headquarters in the national capital. This after the alleged victim accused Nihal Chand of intimidating her to withdraw the case, also appealing to the Prime Minister for justice.
मुझे पैसे का, नौकरी का और ये सब लालच दिए जा रहे हैं और प्रेशर भी बनाया जा रहा है और धमकियां भी दी जा रही.
The Modi government, finding itself in the midst of a major political crisis, remains defiant, citing that the Rajasthan police had filed a report in the case in 2012. Then was that of Ashok Gehlot.
जिस केस का एक बार क्लोज कर दिया गया हो, वो भी हमारी सरकार नहीं, कांग्रेस पार्टी की सरकार. मुझे आश्चर्य हो रहा है कि कांग्रेस के लोग भारतीय जनता पार्टी के कार्यालय पर क्यों धरना दे रहे हैं.
Even as the National Commission for Women sought a report from the Rajasthan government, the opposition Congress continued to mount pressure on the Prime Minister. Former ministers now asking Narendra Modi to walk the talk.
Well, I've heard the Prime Minister likes to present himself as a decisive, tough Prime Minister. And I would imagine that a decisive, tough Prime Minister would take a view on this. And I can't see anyone saying that we don't accept your view.
As the clamour for Nihal Chand's resignation grows, the BJP so far has chosen to back him. All eyes will now be on 20th July when the Minister of State for Chemicals and Fertilizers will be replying to the notice sent by the Jaipur court. The question now is, will Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, walk the talk on the issue of women's safety and security? With Bureau Inputs in New Delhi, Maria Shakil. Okay, let me bring our panelists together on my second talking point here on India at 9. First among them, Dr. Sambit Patra, spokesperson for the Bharatiya Janata Party, joining me here in the studio. Rita Bahugna Joshi, senior leader of the Congress. Vrinda Grover is joining us, human rights lawyer from the capital. And Kavita Srivastav, the national secretary of the PUCL, is joining us from Jaipur. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining me here on India at 9. I think, needless to say, I'm going to start with you, Dr. Patra. Mr. Nihal Chand is accused of a very, very, very serious charge of rape. Why should he not be asked to step down by your government pending investigations in this matter?
Anubha, I have been going to a number of channels on the same topic and I believe I would be quite repetitive. But still I would say that this is a very sensitive issue, and so I would maintain all my sensitiveness, all my humility, and with all due regards to the ladies on the channel, because it's a very important issue. I've always maintained that the judiciary is of paramount importance in the country, and as far as India is concerned, its judiciary is one of the most acclaimed judiciary cutting across the political borderlines of countries. Secondly, I believe, look at the timeline of this whole case. The timeline speaks a lot for itself. The FIR was first lodged in November 2011. For 1 long year, the police investigated the case, and in December 2012, a closure report was filed by the police of a state which had a hostile government. Hostile government in the sense it belonged to the opposition, which was not ours.
Understood.
And I believe a government which does not belong to us, naturally, no one would be able to fix the police there. Secondly, it went, the alleged victim was not satisfied with the closure report. She filed the case in 2013, which went on for 1 year in the court of law, and the Metropolitan Magistrate at the end of the day, after 1 year in 2014, upheld the fact that, well, whatever was stated by the police in the closure report was right. Thereafter, the lady in question went to a district court which
and
also
has filed a review petition. Dr. Patra, let me halt you there. If there is so much belief in the lower courts or in the trial courts which gave in a verdict that perhaps can be seen as favourable to Dr. Nihal Chand, why is there not enough support or enough confidence that you have in this particular court that is now going to try and open this case again?
No, we have to know a few things. First and foremost, after the 2 courts said that, well, the police closure report was right, one of the accused in the meantime, one Mr. Garg, went to the High Court of Rajasthan.
That's true.
Where the Rajasthan High Court stated that before the revision petition, if at all it comes up, all the accused should be called and should be heard.
Dr. Patra, the only question is that no one is denying that this is a judicial process. This process may go up to the Supreme Court. I think the only question is that yes, Mr. Nihal Chand has to go through the process of law pending these investigations. He is in a position that's a position of influence. He's a minister. Should it not be incumbent on this government to let him step away pending these investigations, pending there is a verdict? No one's convicting him.
No, as I told, it's a very sensitive issue, but I still say that it's almost like demeaning the lower courts of the country. When 2 or 3 courts of the same country, I mean, where we are discussing that a review petition has been opened.
You're willing to go with 2 courts, but you're not willing to go with the last court, which could open the case.
A clean chit is a clean chit unless it is proved otherwise.
It has gone up to the court. The court has sent a notice, Dr. Patra.
A notice has been sent why your case should not be opened.
It has asked for a summon. It has not rejected it.
No.
The last court could have very well rejected it and saying that we are upholding, but they haven't.
But the statement is why your case should not be opened, in the sense that we'll hear all the 16 so-called accused.
It could have dismissed
so let's
it
wait
and say
for
that
August 7th.
It could have dismissed it and say that we stand by the trial court order.
Could have.
It hasn't.
Just as the case went through 2 courts, let's wait as to what the 3rd court of the same degree as the other courts is going to hear on this. But secondly, let me also bring in over here a very important point. I'm a young person, I'm through the social media, and today I have been watching the ETV as well, and there is a video, an alleged sting operation. I would not vouch by it because it has not been authenticated, and it is a matter of media, so let's wait for the media as to what it says. Then there is a sting operation, so I believe
Dr. Patra, Dr. Patra, I have to interrupt because that is a notion that everyone brings in whenever there is an allegation of rape, of sexual assault. You want to put in a doubt?
Not at all.
You want to put in a doubt on the veracity of this
complaint. This is a very sensitive issue. I have all respect to the lady in question. With all my respect, I am not questioning anyone.
Why are you bringing up a so-called alleged sting operation whose veracity has not been...
No. Because after all, it is your fraternity, the media, which is questioning it. I am not questioning it. Remember, ETV, I believe, is an important channel, and since it is running the thing since morning, I believe this word alleged has been used number of times. So we have to look into this.
Before I go to my other panelists, I have this one question that strikes me. You, Dr. Patra, as an individual, the government, the BJP, everyone has so much faith on Mr. Nihal Chand that being a minister in this government, he is not going to try and influence investigations in any manner. I'm not putting a question mark on his character or what he would do, but one would presume that here is a man in a position of influence. He should not be allowed to interfere with the investigations, especially since the victim has come forward and says she's being intimidated, she's being offered money.
I have my utmost respect for the law of this land, and I believe if anyone complains to the required authority that she has been or he has been intimidated, required amount of protection to her or him would definitely be accorded. And secondly, it is not that I know Mr. Nihal Chand personally, but I have faith in the judiciary of this country, and since this case has passed through 2 courts for 1 long year, I believe the judge was not fixed. That is all.
Okay, well, the 3rd judge, remember, I'm underlining that point that the 3rd judge has seen the matter, seen the evidence on record and issued these summons. He hasn't dismissed it and said the case is closed. Vrinda, let me bring you in and you can get a chance to respond to Dr. Patra, but I want to start by asking you, the victim has come forward, the complainant has come forward and said she's being intimidated, she's being threatened. Isn't it incumbent on the state government first to actually provide security, whether it's the district authorities, whether it's the state government?
Absolutely. I think this is scandalous what is happening, that here is a cabinet minister facing a court procedure where there are charges of not just rape, but this case is actually much more heinous and grave. Her husband was providing her for his business of political interest. So the alleged accused, the now cabinet minister, has actually used her as part of services that he was getting. This is the man who's today the Minister of State. People are going to go to him for various kinds of work and engagement, including work. My second point here is that there's a question of law, ethics and political culture. Insofar as the law is concerned, there is today a revision petition. It's routine in an appellate legal system.
True.
And this is a superior court to the 2 courts that Mr. Patra does not fail to cite repeatedly.
True.
This is a superior court to the courts that have closed this. Clean chit is a concoction of the BJP, it's not legal parlance. Just some unsolicited advice for Mr. Patra. Mr. J.D. Titler, whose victim I represent in court, actually stands on exactly the same footing today as Nihal Chand. With the lower court having ruled against us, we have gone in revision. Yet we have held that he should not even be given an election ticket. That brings to me to my second point of ethics. What is probity in public life? what is the signal we are giving? A cabinet minister is handpicked by the Prime Minister. As long as he stays in that position, he enjoys the patronage of no less than Narendra Modi.
Right.
Would any police officer, would any investigation happen in that case? Don't we understand how influence and power exercises itself?
I think you want to respond, Samit.
With all due diligence, I mean, I would again repeat my thing that look, the whole thing went under the eagle eye of a judge for 1 long year. And I believe unless it is
Vrinda, this is a superior court. She makes a valid point. This is a superior court.
That's what I'm reacting.
And there is no clean chit.
Anubha, that's what I'm reacting to. One has given a clean chit. The other is yet to process itself.
It
so
is
I
not
believe,
a clean chit, Dr. Patra.
Yes, it is. It said that the police closure report was right.
Not.
That's what the Metropolitan Magistrate said. And secondly, till the whole thing does not pass through the process in the court that has been applied to, I believe the clean chit holds back.
I'm coming back to that in Vrinda's words. Surely there is ethics to this matter. Surely there is probity to this matter. Surely this is a minister in a government which during the campaign said, we are going to stand for women's rights. Surely all of that must count. In fact, it must have counted when he took the oath of office, but it certainly counts now.
Definitely. Ethics, probity and oath. These are of paramount importance. I mean, no ignorance in this. But the most important issue is the legality of the matter. And the legality of the matter is...
And you're not willing to accept?
No. It's not that I'm not willing to accept. It's just that I have faith on my judicial system. Most of the judicial system, as of now, has given him a clean chit. Let's wait as to what the next process says.
You know,
Before
Patra,
that, why are we jumping into conclusions?
That's an argument that's not going to cut ice because you're using 2 trial courts who would have somewhat not taken your party man into the ambit, but there is one superior court which is clearly looking at reopening this case. Kavita, let me bring you in because I want to actually point to some of the facts that are a part of the Rajasthan Police's investigation, which Dr. Patra has alluded to constantly and said that there was a Congress government in charge at that point in time, and really this is the investigation that stood the ground. I think if you did a cursory glance, you'll see anyone could see how flawed this investigation is. The police during the investigation has asked this particular complainant to bring a witness in this case. It's a case of gang rape. She's been asked the date of the rape, her alleged sexual assaults carried over a period of time. She's accused her husband in the rape case, and as Vrinda was pointing out, alleged he used to drug her, used to use her to promote his business. That husband was missing in the investigations. She said he made a CD. There is no investigation of the CD. This investigation is clearly under the cloud.
I agree with you. Actually, this is a case that we've been dealing with since 2011. It's 3.5 years now. And the girl also came and stayed at our short stay home. We did our own investigation. There was nothing hanky-panky about her, that she's being politically used. In fact, she is really being treated very, very badly by the police. And she is being maligned constantly by such panelists that are sitting here and the political people in the state. It was BJP and Congress. Please let me tell you that the people whom she's charging
sitting over here are maligning any lady in question.
Dr. Patra, you made that point. You made that point of the CD. That's not a fair point to make.
They should not be personalized. Remember, I said in the very beginning that it's a very sensitive issue. Don't throw personal marks over here.
That's your opening remark. That's your opening remark. Go ahead, Kavita. Go ahead.
Yeah, see, there were people who were from the Congress and the BJP, and her own husband belongs to the BJP at the block level, and he also belongs to the Jat Yuva Mahasabha, and it was very messy with Congress, BJP and also a policeman of a high rank. Now right from the beginning, the premise was that she's lying. We were very disappointed. Even the Women's Commission fought for her, the State Women's Commission, and we were let down completely by the police investigation and the Ashok Gehlot government. I'm so glad that this issue has been brought to light now that this man has become a minister, and in all fairness, if we want a fair investigation, this man must step down. Otherwise he's influential, he'll prejudice the court, he is threatening her, and this ETV sting is all rubbish. I must tell you, she held a press conference saying that no reporter came to her. She has not made any such statement that ETV is trying to say. See, there's a proper campaign to undermine her, to weaken her, and I think this should stop, and this man must resign for a fair investigation by the court.
Fair enough.
Can I just, I have a small question. Ms. Kavita, I have a small question for you. First and foremost, since you said that you had been actively involved in this case from the very beginning, and you found that the Ashok Gehlot government was not compliant with what justice should have been, and you found that probably the police and the court thereafter did not take proper action. First, did you write a letter to the governor saying that, since you were actively involved, did you write a letter to the governor saying that the chief minister is not behaving as a chief minister and the Director General of Police should have done? And secondly, Ms. Kavita, please take a question. No, second question is very important. Kavita ji, please take a question. Kavita ji, please take a question. Since
is the onus on PUCL? Is PUCL standing trial?
All respect, no, Kavita is not standing a trial. But all, no. Remember one thing, if one is fighting for justice, if one knows everything in and out, then have we stood against injustice?
No, we've written to everybody.
Anubha ji,
we've taken this case up to the highest level.
Question.
Well, you asked
it was only Anubha, give me a second to complete my question.
You're diverting. It's a valid point. You're diverting. The question is only on Mr. Nihal Chand. Out of the 16 or 17 people accused, the question is Mr. Nihal Chand. The question, Ashok Gehlot government cannot be held up as scanner at this point in time.
Anubha, I'm answering all your questions, but my important question to PUCL, which took up this matter, is if they felt the justice was not done and somehow the judges of the court and the police were influenced,
they're replying.
Did they write to the higher authorities? Did they write to the Supreme Court?
I think let me hold you there. Kavita, go ahead. Go ahead.
No.
Quickly.
I just want to say one small thing.
Go ahead.
I think the BJP is not examining the filthy mess, how they use women in their political party. The Congress did it. There are 2 ministers in jail. They killed that woman.
This is
the BJP is very similar.
This is not
in
Nihal Chand's case. How is BJP using its women? This is generalization.
Okay, I'm going to pause you here.
This is wrong.
Kavita, we'll have to stop it here. Kavita, I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to go to Rita Bahuguna Joshi, who has been possibly listening to this entire debate unfold, if I can call it. Rita Bahuguna Joshi, we also, the Mahila Morcha today come outside the BJP headquarters. I don't want to take this discussion away from Nihal Chand because the focus is here. But it's not as if the Congress has really clean hands. You've got several ministers as well. One minister that I can certainly quote to you is Mr. Harak Singh, Agriculture Minister in Uttarakhand, facing a charge of molestation. He still continues to be. What is the face that the Mahila Morcha has or the Congress has in asking? I'm not putting the BJP out of the hook. I'm not putting the Mr. Nihal Chand out of the hook. But what is the Congress talking about?
Please let us understand first we are discussing an issue which relates to a central cabinet minister, 1. 2, and I am very surprised at the chauvinistic defense that Mr. Samit Patra has put forward. Now he is saying that he believes in the lower court and why he will not condemn. There is a legal process in which a higher court has reopened the case. The matter is in investigation. He has to reply, and the girl has gone into the police. And she's accusing the minister and his supporters of threatening her life, and yet she is not being given any protection. And the BJP is not even coming in defense of the girl. The Minister for Women and Child Development says, "I don't sit on judgment. Who am I to give justice?" The Prime Minister probably will meet her tomorrow, day after. She's looking for an audience with him. The question here is, the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, came into office with the promise of zero tolerance. The BJP went hammer and tongs on every event that happened in a non-BJP state. and they were all for women's empowerment in that case,
Rita,
and giving justice to them.
Ma'am, I have to interrupt you here.
They are saying
Understood that this has been the plank of the election campaign. Women's security has been a plank of election campaign. Rita ji, I get that point. I haven't seen. Rita ji, my simple question to you, my simple submission to you.
You should also have to.
Rita ji, you asked these questions to the sovereignistic Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Mr. Ashok Gehlot. Did you ask him all this?
Let's not cross-talk. Rita ji, there is a question that needs to be answered. This can't be a monologue. Rita ji, my humble request to you, and I appreciate that. There is a question.
You will have your time. You will get your time to rebut.
Rita ji, there is a question. I as an anchor have a question. No panelist is questioning you. My question to you is, we are only seeing the Congress Mahila workers, we are only seeing the Congress leaders act at this point in time. You know, Mr. Nihal Chand was sworn in. This government really has been in place for about 20-25 days. Till the summons came in, it's not as if the Congress government or Congress leaders actually wanted to make it an issue. You've been very silent about this as well. The Congress has woken up very late.
The question here is very different. There is this girl who has been repeatedly raped by not one but 1.5 dozen people all over the years in connivance with her own husband. It's a very serious case in which a minister involved, and when she took his name, when she named in the FIR, he was not a minister, and since then the case is going on, and if a higher court has reopened it, let there be probity in the NDA government.
Can I come in over here? Anubha, I need to come in over here.
Rita, I think
Rita ji, I have to ask something to Rita ji, please.
Okay,
allow me to ask something.
One second, Samit. I'll have to pause you.
All are against me. I have to ask.
I think, you know, there is, Rita ji, there is a great amount of insight in a sense that when a party actually comes out of the government, because I asked you that question about Harak Singh Rawat, currently an agriculture minister in Uttarakhand, facing a charge of molestation. Yes, Nihal Chand faces a charge of rape. But I want to get in Vrinda here. No. You've seen, just one second, Samit. You know, you've
took back her charges. The victim
the matters in High Court, ma'am. Ma'am, the matters in High Court.
Rita ji, I just want to ask you a question. Rita ji, I just want to ask you a question. Rita ji, please answer a single question. Rita ji, I just want to ask you a question. This is very important. You see, all of them are against the party. I'm the only person representing the thing.
I'm going to ask for audios to be put up.
No, see.
Just 1 second,
Samit. Why are you defending it? If you think that was wrong, how does this make you right?
Okay, Rita ji, I have to make you pause here. Samit, go ahead. You have 10 seconds only.
But if Rita ji stops alone.
Rita ji, just 1 second.
Your Prime Minister makes all claims.
Rita ji, understood. That point has been made. That point has been made, Rita ji. That point has been made. Thank you.
Anubha, all I wanted to ask Rita ji, all I wanted to ask Rita ji was, the lady in question in fact was dissatisfied with the police closure report. She was protesting then when there was Gehlot government. Why did not the Mahila Morcha under the aegis of Ms. Rita Bahuguna Joshi come out then? Why today?
Okay, understood, and I think that's a fair point, but Vrinda Gowat, that actually puts us in a... 1 second, ma'am. 1 second. You want to respond?
Patra, you should get the Mr. Nihal Chand to leave his seat so that there's fair investigation.
This was a question to Rita Bahuguna Joshi. I believe that the Congress answer.
I want to bring you in as you see this debate or this crosstalk unfold. I think at the center of it lies the fact that no political party really is committed to this issue.
Yes. Anubha, can I just come in? I think Mr. Patra needs to stop interrogating other people and interrogate his party. This is not the opportunity to find alibis. There is absolute political bankruptcy in this country. Women of this country and right-minded citizens of this country are beginning to despair. Your party has come into power on promises. Words like sensitivity and respect are not enough. This is gimmickry that we are exhausted by. We want to see action. Why do you not have faith in the court system? Why can you not ask this man to step down? Are we asking him to be lynched? Are we asking him to be hanged? Please stop doing this. This is not a football game going on between the Congress and the BJP. Stop being clever and try and be intelligent and answer what is happening in your party. Why is this deafening silence from the Prime Minister? Are women not important in this country? Today we have a national crisis. Half the population of this country is unsafe. The message you are giving is, A rapist, an alleged rapist, can be a cabinet minister.
And
that is the loud and
Can I
clear
come in
message within 1 month of coming to power.
Okay.
And don't use smart words here.
Brinda, I think you've made your point and you've been very articulate about it. Sambit, you're not going to get a chance to respond to that. My only question to you is, the BJP, while in opposition, and I think I saw you on many panels in a sense, you demanded the resignation of Mr. Bhonsle. You demanded the resignation of, I think, Mr. Ashwani Kumar. There was not even an FIR in some places. There was this big question of political morality. There was a big question of ethics. Why don't the same ethics apply now? No one is asking, no one is saying he's a convict, no one is saying that he should be punished. The only thing that people are actually asking for, or women rights groups are at least asking for, is that he step down till investigations are over.
I believe this is a matter of legality than anything else. When the legal aspects are scrutinizing the whole issue, we should not make a hue and cry out of it. In the sense, right now I heard Vrindaji saying that he's a rapist. Already Vrindaji had made him a rapist. In the sense, no, you first said rapist. You can rewind and see. First and twice you have called him a rapist already.
I think she has enough body of experience to
No, I understand, but she had twice already called him rapist. I've been counting the numbers also. As to how many times she has called him rapist. I am answering the question. If you have biasness and if you feel that courts are not required, let us close down.
She's not saying
my
that.
simple suggestion is, let's shut down these lower courts. Let us have debates, debates and decide who is the culprit and who is not. If you feel, I'm not diverting at all.
Okay, when does this become serious enough for the BJP that Mr. Nihal Chand should actually step aside? When? At what point of the, let me take your argument, at what point of this judicial scrutiny does it become serious enough for you?
It was serious enough right from the day when the allegation was made and the FIR was filed, in the sense that the person concerned, the alleged rapist as they are calling him, in fact was into the judicial process, went through everything, cooperated through the thing, and then he was given a clean chit.
We are constantly repeating ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's very, very clear that the BJP is going to brazen this out. There is going to be no stepping aside, no resignation as far as Mr. Nihal Chand is concerned. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us here on this panel. Needless to say, once again, it's a story we're going to follow over the next couple of days. Welcome back. You're with India at 9. Time now to do a quick roundup of the other two big stories of the day, and this is the latest in the Preeti Zinta case, where the Wadia group has filed a complaint with the Mumbai police alleging that group chairman Nusli Wadia has been receiving threatening calls from the underworld. Meanwhile, the Mumbai police has established contact with Preeti Zinta. She is expected to record her statement by the end of this week. A high alert has been issued in Uttarakhand after heavy rains lashed the area today. Officials are saying that they have identified 7 critical points and 3 danger zones in the region. They have, however, assured that these are only preventive measures and that there is no reason to worry. Well, that's all we could pack in here on India at 9. If you have been,